The overhead lights at Moretti's bistro flickered with the rhythm of a dying heartbeat. Elena Crawford wiped down the marble bar for the third time that hour, her fingers red from the chemical sting of industrial cleaner. Outside, rain hammered against the windows of the Naples district, turning the streetlights into watercolor smudges. "Table 12 needs water," barked Vincent, the floor manager, his voice cutting through the dinner rush chaos. "And the VIP section just seated. Move." Elena grabbed a pitcher, her back protesting the 12-hour shift. At 24, she already felt decades older. The medical bills from her mother's surgery sat in a manila envelope beneath her bed, $18,000 that might as well have been $18 million. This job, with its brutal hours and demanding clientele, was her only lifeline. She pushed through the kitchen doors into the dining room, where crystal chandeliers cast golden light over white tablecloths. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and polished concrete, upscale enough to attract the city's elite, gritty enough to remind everyone where they were. 3 men entered through the front entrance, water dripping from their dark coats. The hostess, Patricia, went pale. Elena had worked here long enough to recognize that particular shade of fear. The man in the center moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need announcement. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from granite. His suit probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. But it was his eyes that held her attention gray as winter storm clouds, and just as unforgiving. "Mr. Donovan." Vincent materialized beside the group, his usual arrogance replaced by careful deference. "Your usual table is ready." So this was James Donovan. Elena had heard the name whispered in the kitchen, seen the way staff avoided his section. He controlled half the commercial real estate in the city, they said. The other half he was working on. Some called him a businessman. Others used different words that didn't get said aloud. His companions flanked him like shadows, their shoulders filling their suits in ways that suggested violence as easily as protection. They settled into the corner booth, the one with a clear view of both entrances and the kitchen door. Strategic positioning. Elena delivered water to table 12, hyper-aware of the VIP section in her peripheral vision. She wasn't assigned to that area. Vincent always handled Donovan personally, but she felt the weight of observation, like standing too close to a fire. "Elena!" Vincent snapped his fingers. "Clear table 7. Now." She moved mechanically, stacking plates, wiping crumbs. The bistro thrummed with conversation, the clink of silverware, the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Normal. Everything needed to appear normal. But normal shattered when Derek Hammond stumbled in through the side door. Derek was a regular, a lawyer who drank too much and tipped too little. Tonight he was beyond drunk, his tie loosened, his words slurring as he grabbed Elena's wrist on her way past his table. "Hey, sweetheart," he breathed, vodka sharp on his breath. "Why don't you sit down, keep me company?" "Mr. Hammond, please." Elena tried to pull away gently. Making a scene would get her fired. Vincent had made that clear after the last incident. "I'm working." His grip tightened, fingers digging into her skin. "I'm a good customer. Show some appreciation." Her pulse spiked. The room continued its normal rhythm around them, unaware or unwilling to intervene. Vincent was in the kitchen. Patricia was seating a new party. She was alone with Derek's hand turning her wrist numb, and his eyes hungry in a way that made her stomach turn. Then Elena remembered. Her mother, before the illness had stolen her strength, had been a bartender in this same district. "When you're in trouble, baby," she'd said once, "and no one's listening, let your hands speak for you. The right people will understand." Elena had thought it was just advice about service industry signals. But her mother had lived here, worked here, survived here. She'd known things. Moving slowly, Elena set her tray on Derek's table. Her left hand pressed flat against the surface, and with her right, she reached for the small silver ring on her index finger, a simple band with a serpent design that had belonged to her mother. She turned it once, deliberately, so the serpent's head pointed toward the VIP section. Then she waited. 3 seconds passed. Elena counted them, her wrist still trapped in Derek's grip, her heart hammering against her ribs. James Donovan's water glass stopped halfway to his lips. She hadn't looked at him directly. Couldn't. But she felt the shift in the room's temperature, the way air pressure changes before a storm breaks. "I said." Derek pulled her closer, his chair scraping back. "Sit down. The lady is working." The voice came from behind Derek, low and controlled. James Donovan stood there, hands in his pockets, his expression neutral. But his companions had risen from their booth, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Derek's hand loosened. He looked up, confusion and alcohol clouding his judgment. "This is a private conversation." "No," James said softly. "It isn't." Something in his tone made Derek release Elena's wrist entirely. She stumbled back, cradling her arm. Vincent emerged from the kitchen, his face cycling through expressions: confusion, recognition, fear. "Mr. Donovan, I apologize for any." James raised one finger, and Vincent fell silent. The entire restaurant had gone quiet, conversations dying like lights being switched off. "Marcus," James nodded to one of his companions, a man with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "Please escort Mr. Hammond outside. Make sure he finds a cab." "I don't need." Derek started, but Marcus was already there, one hand on his shoulder. The pressure must have been considerable, because Derek stood immediately, his face draining of color. "Your tab is settled," James said, still in that same controlled voice. "Don't come back." Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then let Marcus guide him toward the exit. The other patrons watched in silence. This was the kind of power that didn't need volume or threats, just presence and the implicit understanding that resistance was futile. Vincent hovered nearby, visibly calculating. "Mr. Donovan, please. There's no need for your evening to be disrupted. Everything is handled. Let me bring you—" "Where did you learn that signal?" James asked Elena, ignoring Vincent entirely. Elena's throat felt tight. The ring was still on her finger, the serpent glinting in the chandelier light. "My mother," she said quietly. "She worked in this district. 20 years ago." Something flickered across James's face. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. Her name? Catherine Crawford. She bartended at the Copper Room before it closed. James nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already suspected. "I knew her, briefly, a long time ago." He pulled a card from his inside pocket, placed it on the table where Elena had set her tray. "When your shift ends, wait by the staff exit. My driver will take you home safely." "That's not necessary." "It is." He met her eyes directly for the first time, and Elena understood why people feared him. Those gray eyes held layers of calculation, of experiences she couldn't begin to imagine. But underneath, something else flickered, something almost protective. That signal isn't just a call for help, it's a marker. You used it correctly, which means you know what it represents. And that means people might come asking questions. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? The kind you don't want to answer alone. James returned to his booth, the conversation clearly over. His companions settled back into their seats, and gradually, the restaurant's normal rhythm resumed. Vincent grabbed Elena's elbow, pulling her toward the kitchen. "What the hell was that? What signal? How do you know James Donovan?" "I don't," Elena said truthfully. But she looked down at the card in her hand. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. No company, no title. It didn't need either. She slipped it into her apron pocket, her wrist still throbbing where Derek had grabbed her. The last hour of her shift passed in a blur. She served drinks, cleared tables, smiled at customers. But her mind kept returning to James's words. That signal isn't just a call for help. It's a marker. What had her mother gotten her into? The staff exit opened onto a narrow alley, slick with rain and the smell of garbage bins. Elena pushed through the door at midnight, exhausted to her bones. The street beyond was empty. The district's nightlife concentrated several blocks away. A black sedan sat at the alley's mouth, engine running. As Elena approached, the rear door opened. James Donovan sat inside, still in his suit, though he'd loosened his tie. "Get in." It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a suggestion either. Elena hesitated on the curb, rain soaking through her jacket. Every instinct screamed warning. But Derek's fingers were still imprinted on her wrist, and she remembered the way he'd looked at her like she was something to consume. She got in. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The driver, an older man with silver hair, pulled smoothly into traffic without a word. "There's a coffee shop on Brennan Street," James said. "Open all night, we'll talk there. I should get home. My mother is in St. Mary's recovery wing, room 304. Recovering well from her valve replacement surgery. The night nurse checks on her every 45 minutes. James caught her expression. "Information is currency, Miss Crawford. I spend it wisely." The coffee shop was nearly empty, just a student with a laptop and a homeless man nursing tea in the corner. James selected a booth in the back, gestured for Elena to sit. The driver remained outside, standing beneath an awning, his presence both casual and vigilant. A waitress brought 2 coffees without being asked. James slid one across the table to Elena. "Your mother," he said, "worked for Thomas Marconi. The copper room was his establishment. She was good at what she did, knew how to read people, when to listen, when to forget what she'd heard." He stirred sugar into his coffee with slow, deliberate movements. "The ring she gave you was Marconi's way of marking people under his protection. A woman wearing that ring and signaling correctly could call for help from anyone in his network." Elena's fingers found the ring automatically, turning it. "Marconi's been dead for 15 years. Yes. And his network dissolved. But some of us remember the old signals. Honor them." James looked at her directly. "You used it correctly. Hand flat, ring turned, serpent pointing toward the ranking person in the room. Your mother taught you well. She never told me what it meant, just that it was for emergencies. Probably wise. Knowledge can be dangerous." He paused. "The problem is, Derek Hammond works for Preston Financial. They have connections to people who remember Marconi too. When Marcus escorted him out, he was making calls. By morning, people will ask questions about who you are and why you know that signal." Rain drummed against the window. Elena felt the weight of something vast and invisible closing around her. "What do I do?" "Let me protect you," James said simply, "until this blows over." "And what does that cost?" His smile was thin. "We'll see." The flowers arrived at Elena's apartment building at 7 in the morning. White roses, 3 dozen, with a card that read, "For your trouble, J.D." Beneath the bouquet was an envelope. Elena opened it with shaking hands, already knowing what she'd find. 50 $100 bills, crisp and sequential. She stared at the money for a full minute. $5,000, more than she made in 3 months. Enough to cover one of her mother's outstanding bills. Enough to buy time. She picked up her phone, dialed the number from the business card. James answered on the second ring. "Miss Crawford, I can't accept this." A pause. "Why not?" "Because I don't know what it obligates me to." Elena looked around her studio apartment. The water-stained ceiling, the radiator that clanked through winter nights, the framed photo of her mother from healthier days. "My mom taught me that gifts from men like you always have strings." Smart woman. Something that might have been approval colored his voice. "Keep the flowers, return the money if you prefer, but understand that my protection doesn't require payment. The signal you used, it's a debt I owe to Marconi's memory, not something you owe me. People don't do things for free." "No," James agreed. "They don't, but some debts transcend money. Your mother earned this protection. I'm simply honoring it." Elena wanted to believe him, but she'd waitressed long enough to know that nothing came without a price. "I'm bringing the money back." She hung up before he could argue. The address on his business card led to a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel. The lobby receptionist took one look at Elena's uniform. She hadn't changed after her shift, and her expression cooled. "I need to see James Donovan." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but..." "Then I'm afraid Mr. Donovan isn't available. If you'd like to leave a message, tell him Elena Crawford is here. He'll see me." The receptionist's eyebrow rose, but she picked up the phone. Murmured something. Her expression shifted to surprise, then careful neutrality. 23rd floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator." The someone was Marcus, the man with the scarred eyebrow. He nodded at Elena as she stepped off the elevator. "This way." James's office occupied a corner, windows overlooking the city. He stood at one, hands in his pockets, watching the morning traffic. Turned when Elena entered. "You're persistent." Elena set the envelope on his desk. "I don't take charity." "It's not charity. It's compensation for the trouble Derek Hammond caused you. Which you solved. We're even." James studied her with those calculating gray eyes. "Most people would take the money and run. Why are you different?" "Because taking it means I owe you something. And I've seen enough to know that owing you something is dangerous." Elena met his gaze steadily. "I appreciate what you did, but I can take care of myself." "Can you?" James moved around the desk, not threatening, just present. "Derek Hammond filed a formal complaint with the restaurant last night. Claims you assaulted him. Vincent's deciding whether to fire you." Elena's stomach dropped. "That's ridiculous." "That's politics. Hammond has friends, and they're pushing Vincent to make an example." James leaned against the desk. "I can make one phone call and end this, but you won't let me, will you?" Not if it means being in your debt. Then you're stubborn and foolish. But he smiled slightly, as if he respected both qualities. Go to work tonight. If Vincent fires you, call me. If Hammond's friends cause problems, call me. If you change your mind about protection. He picked up the envelope, tucked it into his jacket. The offer remains open. Elena left before she could reconsider. But when she got home, she found Marcus standing in her building's lobby, reading a newspaper. He looked up, nodded once, then went back to his reading. James's protection, it seemed, didn't require her acceptance. Vincent didn't fire her, but he cut her hours in half and reassigned her to lunch shifts, fewer tips, worse customers. Elena knew it was punishment for embarrassing the restaurant, for involving Donovan, for being more trouble than she was worth. She picked up extra hours at a diner 2 districts over, working doubles until her feet bled. The medical bills didn't stop because her income had dropped. Neither did rent. 3 weeks after the incident, Tyler Morrison appeared. Elena was locking up the diner at 11 when she saw him leaning against a streetlight across the street, tall, blonde, with the kind of easy smile that had fooled her once before, her ex-boyfriend. The man she'd spent 2 years with before discovering he was using her apartment to store stolen merchandise. Ellie, he called, crossing the street. Long time. Not long enough. Elena kept walking, keys clutched between her fingers. What do you want, Tyler? That's cold. He fell into step beside her. Can't I just want to see how you're doing? No. He laughed, but it held an edge. See, that's the thing. I heard you've been doing well. Made some powerful friends. Thought maybe you could help an old friend out. Elena stopped walking. They were on a commercial block, shops closed, streetlights casting pools of yellow on wet pavement. I'm not giving you money. I don't want your money. Tyler's smile faded. I want you to introduce me to James Donovan. I don't know him. Bullshit. I've got sources. You used some kind of secret signal, and he came running. That means you're connected. Tyler stepped closer, and Elena caught the desperate gleam in his eyes. I've got a business opportunity. Real estate deal. I just need an introduction to Donovan, and we both make out good. Come on, Ellie. For old times. No. Elena started walking again, faster now. Tyler grabbed her arm, not hard but insistent. You owe me. Remember that jewelry store job? I never mentioned your name when I got caught. Could have said you knew about the merchandise. Could have made things very difficult for you. Ice slid down Elena's spine. That's blackmail. That's leverage. Introduce me to Donovan, or I start talking to people about your involvement. His grip tightened. 24 hours, Ellie. Then I go to the police with what I know. He released her and walked away, whistling. Elena stood frozen on the sidewalk, her breath coming in short gasps. She'd never been involved in Tyler's schemes, had broken up with him the moment she'd discovered them. But she'd lived in the apartment. Her name was on visitor logs at the storage facility. If Tyler lied convincingly enough, if he had any evidence at all, her mother couldn't survive a trial. The stress alone would kill her. Elena pulled out her phone with shaking hands, stared at James's number. She'd sworn she wouldn't call unless absolutely necessary, wouldn't become indebted. But Tyler's threat wasn't something she could handle alone. She dialed. Miss Crawford. James's voice was calm, professional. Are you injured? No, but Elena explained quickly. Tyler's blackmail, the old accusations, the 24-hour deadline. Silence on the line. Then, where are you? Brennan Street. Near the diner. Marcus is 3 minutes away. Wait inside until he arrives. A pause. Elena, this ends tonight. I promise you that. Please don't hurt him. The words came automatically, though she hated Tyler for forcing this. He's desperate, not dangerous. I don't hurt people without cause, James said quietly. But I do solve problems, permanently. The line went dead. Marcus arrived in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. He escorted Elena to the same black sedan, didn't speak during the drive. They didn't go to James's office. Instead, they pulled up to a townhouse in the historic district brick facade, ivy climbing the walls, windows glowing with warm light. Mr. Donovan's home, Marcus said, opening her door. He'll want to discuss this privately. The townhouse interior was nothing like Elena expected. She'd imagined cold marble and intimidating art, the kind of space designed to remind visitors of their host's power. Instead, she found exposed beams, comfortable leather furniture, bookshelves crammed with worn paperbacks. A fire crackled in the brick fireplace. James stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped sentences. He gestured for Elena to sit, ended the call. Tyler Morrison, he said without preamble. 28, 2 arrests for receiving stolen property, 1 conviction. Currently works as a mortgage broker at Pinnacle Lending. Barely legitimate outfit that finances questionable developments. He poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses, offered one to Elena. He owes $17,000 to a bookie named Raymond Chen. That's why he needs the introduction. Thinks I'll invest in his scheme, bail him out. Elena sipped the drink whiskey, smooth and expensive. How do you know all that? I make it my business to know threats before they materialize. James sat across from her, firelight playing across his features. The question is what you want me to do about it. I already told you. Don't hurt him. Even though he's threatening you with false charges? Even though he's willing to destroy your life to solve his problems? James studied her. You're remarkably loyal to someone who doesn't deserve it. I'm not loyal to him. I'm loyal to who I am. Elena set down the glass. I don't want to be the kind of person who solves problems with violence. Noble, impractical. But James nodded, as if he'd expected the answer. Then we'll handle it another way. Tyler's debt to Raymond Chen? I'll buy it, which makes Tyler indebted to me. And I'll make it very clear that any further contact with you increases what he owes. As for the jewelry store charges, he has no evidence because you weren't involved. If he makes accusations, my lawyers will bury him in defamation suits. He leaned forward. But understand, Elena, this makes you responsible for his debt. If he defaults, that falls on you. How much? $17,000. Same as your mother's remaining medical bills. The number hung between them, impossibly large, impossible to ignore. Elena felt the trap closing. You knew. You knew what I owed before I ever called tonight. Information is currency, James said again. Yes, I knew, but I wasn't going to use it against you. This is different. You're asking me to resolve a problem without my usual methods. That requires alternative leverage. So I trade Tyler's debt for mine to you. No. James's expression hardened. You allow me to protect you the way I should have been protecting you from the start. Your mother wore Marconi's ring, which meant she was under his protection. That protection extends to you. I'm not calling it a debt. I'm calling it what it is, fulfilling an obligation to someone who once trusted me with her safety. Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The double shifts, the constant fear, Tyler's threat, it was too much. I can't stay here. You can't go home. Tyler knows where you live. So does Derek Hammond's crowd, if they're still interested. James stood, moved to the fireplace. I have a guest room upstairs. Private bathroom. Locks on the door. Stay tonight. In the morning, we'll arrange something more permanent until this situation resolves. I need to work. I'll send someone to collect your uniforms and necessary items. You can call your mother from here. The phone in the guest room is secure. He turned, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. I'm not kidnapping you, Elena. I'm giving you the option to accept help before circumstances force it on you. It was the before that decided her. Because James was right, Tyler wouldn't stop with one blackmail attempt. Derek's complaints might escalate, and Elena was so tired of fighting alone. Just tonight, she said. Just tonight, James agreed. But as Marcus showed her upstairs to a room decorated in blues and creams, with a 4-poster bed and windows overlooking a private garden, Elena knew it was a lie. She was in James Donovan's world now, and people didn't leave his world easily. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. Tyler, the threat, the decision to stay. She found clothes laid out on the chair, jeans and a sweater in exactly her size. In the attached bathroom, new toiletries waited, still in their packaging. James had been thorough. Downstairs, the townhouse was quiet. A note on the kitchen counter. Help yourself to breakfast. I'll be back by noon. J. Elena made coffee, toast, tried to eat, though her stomach was in knots. She called St. Mary's Hospital, checked on her mother. Stable. Recovering. Unaware that her daughter had just accepted protection from a man whose power came from places her mother had worked hard to escape. The morning crawled past. Elena explored the townhouse, careful not to invade private spaces. The living room held more books than she'd ever seen in a home: philosophy, history, biographies of generals and empire builders. No fiction except Shakespeare and Cormac McCarthy. She was examining a shelf of leather-bound volumes when she noticed the door behind it stood slightly ajar. Elena knew she should ignore it. Knew that James's privacy was his business. But the door called to her curiosity, and she'd already crossed so many lines. She pushed it open. The room beyond was an office desk, filing cabinets, walls lined with maps marked with colored pins, and on the desk, a manila folder with her name written in neat block letters. Elena's hands shook as she opened it. Inside, she found her entire life documented: birth certificate copies, employment records from every job she'd held since turning 16, her mother's medical files, complete with billing statements and treatment plans, photos of her apartment building, her usual walking routes, the diner where she worked, and underneath it all, a background report. Criminal record clean, credit score poor but climbing, associates a list of names, some she recognized, others she didn't. Tyler Morrison was highlighted in yellow, with notes about his arrests and current activities. Subject demonstrates strong loyalty patterns and protective instincts toward family. No criminal involvement, but association with Morrison poses reputational risk. Mother's history with Marconi Organization establishes valid claim to protective protocols. Recommend active monitoring and intervention as needed. The date on the report was 3 weeks ago, a day after the incident at Moretti's. You weren't supposed to see that. Elena spun. James stood in the doorway, still in his coat, an unreadable expression on his face. You investigated me. Her voice shook with anger, fear, something she couldn't name. Every detail of my life. You've been watching me. Yes. He didn't apologize, didn't look ashamed. The moment you used that signal, I needed to know who you were and what threats you faced. That's how protection works, Elena. I can't keep you safe from dangers I don't understand. This isn't protection. This is surveillance. Control. She threw the folder on the desk. You knew about Tyler before I called you. You knew about my mother's bills, about Derek's complaint. You've been manipulating everything. I've been managing threats. James stepped into the room, calm despite her fury. Tyler's been circling for days. My people spotted him outside your building, asking questions about you at the diner. Derek Hammond's lawyers were preparing a civil suit. Your mother's hospital was 3 days from sending her case to collections. He gestured at the folder. Yes, I investigated you. Yes, I've been watching, because the alternative is letting you face all of that alone and unprepared. I didn't ask for this. You used the signal. That's exactly what you asked for. He moved closer, and Elena saw something vulnerable in his expression. My father worked for Marconi, died protecting one of his investments. Your mother was at the bar that night, called for help when the shooting started. She saved my life when I was 15 years old. So yes, Elena, I've been watching, because I owe her a debt I can never fully repay, and protecting you is the closest I can come. The revelation hung between them, reshaping everything Elena thought she understood. I want to leave, she said, but the words lacked conviction. No, James said quietly. You want to be angry at me for caring. There's a difference. They stood in the study for a long moment, the manila folder between them like a confession. Elena's anger warred with something more complicated, the exhaustion of fighting alone, the temptation of accepting help, the fear of what that acceptance meant. How long? She asked finally. How long were you planning to watch me without saying anything? As long as necessary. James leaned against the desk. If Tyler hadn't forced the issue, if Derek's people had backed off, I would have stayed in the background, kept you safe without intruding on your life. But threats escalate, Elena. They always do. And I'd rather have you angry at me for invading your privacy than attend your funeral because I respected your boundaries. That's not your choice to make. No, he agreed. It's yours. Which is why I'm giving you one now. Stay here. Let me handle Tyler and Derek and the medical bills and all the other wolves circling. I'll give you safety, stability, a life without constant crisis. Or leave. Walk out that door, and I won't stop you. But understand that protection doesn't come with half measures. If you stay, you're accepting my help fully. If you leave, I step back completely. Elena searched his face for deception, manipulation. Found only a strange, fierce sincerity. Why do you care this much? The debt to my mother, it can't be worth all this effort. Because she gave me a chance at a different life. And I squandered it. James's voice roughened. After my father died, Marconi took me in. Your mother was the one who argued I should go to school instead of deeper into the organization. She's why I got out, built something legitimate. And I've spent 20 years wondering if I could have helped her do the same. If I could have made sure she didn't have to work herself sick trying to give you a better life." He looked away. "I can't change her past, but I can secure your future. Let me do that." The offer was seductive. Elena felt it pulling at her like gravity, the promise of rest, of safety, of someone else carrying the weight she'd borne alone for so long. But she'd watched her mother sacrifice everything for independence, had seen how quickly protection could become possession. "I'll stay," she said slowly, "until Tyler's threat is resolved and my mother's stable. But then I find my own place, make my own way. And you don't get to decide what's best for me without asking." She met his eyes. "I'm not something to be managed, James. I'm someone choosing to accept help. There's a difference." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Agreed. With one condition: if trouble finds you again, you call me before it escalates. Not after, before. And if I need help but don't want your methods, then we negotiate." A slight smile touched his mouth. "I'm capable of restraint when properly motivated." Elena didn't fully believe him, but she believed he'd try, which was more than most people offered. "There's a job opening at one of my properties," James said, moving to safer ground. "Office building downtown needs someone to manage hospitality services for the executive suites. Regular hours, better pay than waitressing, if you're interested. I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's logistics. I need someone trustworthy in that position, and you need employment that doesn't put you in contact with people like Derek Hammond." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "Interviews tomorrow at 9. Whether you take it is your choice." Elena looked at the folder again, at the documentation of her life reduced to bullet points and risk assessments. At the man who'd invaded her privacy out of what he claimed was protection. "Tomorrow," she said. 9 o'clock. The interview went well. Too well. Elena started the following Monday, managing coffee service and catering for a building full of lawyers and financial advisors who barely noticed her existence. The pay was double what she'd made waitressing. Her mother's bills were quietly transferred to James's accountants. Tyler Morrison vanished from her life as completely as morning fog. No calls, no threats, no ambushes on dark streets. Elena tried not to think about what that meant, what James had done to ensure his silence. 3 weeks into the new job, Derek Hammond filed an assault lawsuit. Not against Elena, against James Donovan, claiming emotional distress and lost business opportunities from their confrontation at Moretti's. The amount demanded was absurd, $2 million. "It's a fishing expedition," James explained over dinner at the townhouse. Elena had been staying there, telling herself it was temporary even as her belongings accumulated in the guest room. "Hammond's lawyers know I'll settle rather than deal with public litigation. They're counting on my preference for privacy." "Will you settle?" "No." James cut into his steak with precise movements. "Because settling signals weakness, and weakness invites more attacks. Hammond will lose, publicly, and whoever put him up to this will understand that I'm not a convenient target." Elena pushed food around her plate. "Whoever put him up to it?" "Preston Financial. They've been trying to acquire land I own in the warehouse district. This lawsuit is pressure to negotiate." He set down his fork. "It's business, Elena. Ugly, but contained." 2 days later, everything changed. Elena was leaving the office building at 7, later than usual because of a board meeting that had run long. The parking garage was mostly empty, her heels echoing on concrete. She was unlocking her car. James had insisted on providing one, something reliable with good safety ratings, when she heard footsteps behind her. Tyler Morrison emerged from behind a pillar, but he wasn't alone. 3 men flanked him, their postures aggressive, their eyes tracking her every movement. "Hey, Ellie," Tyler said, and his voice was different, harder, desperate. "Change of plans. You're coming with us." Elena's hand found her phone. "James. Won't help you." One of Tyler's companions stepped forward, revealing a gun tucked into his waistband. "Preston Financial wants a conversation with Donovan. You're the invitation." Elena ran. It was instinct, not strategy. She darted between cars, heard them chase, knew she couldn't outrun them. The garage exit was 50 feet away, then 30, then tires squealed. The black sedan cut off her path, and Marcus stepped out, moving faster than she'd ever seen him move. The first of Tyler's men went down hard, Marcus's fist connecting with surgical precision. The second reached for his gun, but another figure emerged from the sedan's passenger side, intercepting him. Then James was there, having appeared from nowhere, his expression utterly cold. He stepped between Elena and Tyler, who'd stumbled to a stop, eyes wide with fear. "You were warned," James said quietly. "Once. That was generous." Gunfire erupted. Not from Tyler's people, but from the garage's entrance, where 2 more men had appeared. Preston Financial's actual operatives. Elena realized with horror. Tyler had been bait, and she'd walked right into it. Glass shattered. Marcus shoved Elena behind a concrete pillar, his body shielding hers. More of James's people materialized. Where had they been? Returning fire with controlled, professional precision. James tackled Tyler to the ground as bullets sparked off metal. His shoulder bloomed red, blood soaking through his shirt. Elena screamed, started toward him, but Marcus held her back. "Stay down." The firefight lasted 90 seconds. Felt like hours. When silence finally fell, 3 of Preston's men lay motionless on the concrete. Tyler was unconscious, subdued by one of James's security team, and James was pressing his hand to his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Elena broke free from Marcus, dropped to her knees beside James. "You're hit. We need to call." "Already done." James's face was pale but focused. "Marcus, get her out of here." "Not without you," Elena said fiercely. "Don't you dare tell me to leave." Their eyes met. In that moment, Elena realized the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. This wasn't about debts or protection anymore. It hadn't been for a while. "Together then," James said, and let her help him stand. James's shoulder-required surgery bullet had clipped bone but missed the artery. Elena spent the night in the hospital waiting room, Marcus standing silent guard, refusing to answer her questions about what happened to Tyler or Preston Financial's operatives. The police came and went. James's lawyer arrived, spoke in low tones with the detectives, made the entire incident sound like a robbery attempt that James's security had heroically thwarted. No mention of Preston Financial, no mention of Elena's involvement. The bodies disappeared into official reports that would never be read. When James woke, groggy from anesthesia, the first thing he said was, "You're still here. Where else would I be?" Elena pulled her chair closer to the bed, carefully avoided touching his injured shoulder. "You got shot protecting me. Hardly the first time I've been shot. Won't be the last." But his hand found hers, held it gently. Preston Financial's board issued a formal apology this morning. They're backing off the warehouse district entirely. And Tyler's on a bus to Arizona with enough money to start over, and a very clear understanding that returning east means returning to prison. "You didn't kill him?" "No. You asked me not to." James's thumb traced circles on her palm. "But he'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if I've changed my mind. That's punishment enough." Elena thought about the violence in the garage, the cold efficiency with which James's people had eliminated threats, about the power required to make police reports vanish and corporations retreat, about the life she'd stumbled into when she'd turned a silver ring and signaled for help. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Not of you. Of what being close to you means. The danger it brings." "Good." James squeezed her hand. "Fear means you're paying attention. But Elena, I need you to understand the danger existed before you knew me. Tyler would have threatened you regardless. Derek would have filed his lawsuit. Preston Financial would have used whatever leverage they could find. I didn't create these threats. I just made them visible by standing between you and them. And now? Now I'm done pretending this is just about old debts." He looked at her directly. No masks, no careful control. "I'm asking you to stay. Not in the guest room, not temporarily. Stay with me. Let me build something that protects both of us. We'll do it your way with boundaries, with choices, with your voice equal to mine. But stay." It was the vulnerability in his voice that decided her. This man who commanded empires and made threats disappear was asking, not demanding. Offering partnership, not possession. "I'm terrified," Elena said. "Me too." James smiled slightly. "But I've spent 20 years being careful and alone. I'm done with that." She leaned forward, pressed her lips to his forehead. "Then we'll be terrified together." 6 months later, Elena stood in a converted warehouse that had been transformed into a community center. The sign above the door read Silver Signal Foundation Services for Women Escaping Dangerous Situations, funded by James's investments, and managed by Elena's determination to help others find the safety she'd found. Outside, a black sedan waited, James in the driver's seat instead of Marcus. When Elena emerged, tired but satisfied, he smiled and opened the passenger door. Ready to go home? Elena slid into the seat, the silver serpent ring catching the light on her finger. Not her mother's ring anymore, but one James had given her the same design, but engraved with their initials intertwined. Home, she agreed, and realized she finally understood what the word meant. Safety, partnership, choice, and someone who'd catch bullets for her, but also listen when she said no. They drove through Naples district as evening fell, past Moretti's bistro where it had all begun, past the diner where Tyler had made his threats, past all the places Elena had walked alone, carrying weight that had threatened to crush her. She wasn't alone anymore, wasn't crushing anymore. The price of James's protection had been her privacy, her simple life, her illusions about the world's darkness. But the gain had been everything else: safety that didn't mean surrender, partnership that didn't mean possession, and a future that belonged to both of them. Elena reached across the console, laced her fingers through James's. He glanced at her, squeezed gently, then returned his attention to the road. No words were needed. They'd both spoken volumes in the silence between choosing to stay and learning to trust. The silver signal that had once meant danger now meant something different. I'm here. I'm choosing this. I'm not afraid anymore. And for the first time in her life, Elena Crawford wasn't.